Berlin on the way to zero emission by 2030. And we have Dr. Rolf Erfurt with us, who is the CEO at BVG Germany. I'm going to request him to perhaps share his presentation while I introduce him. I'll just take a few moments to introduce Dr. Erfurt. He has been COO and member of the management board at BVG, Germany's largest public transportation company, since October 2019. He began his professional career at Roland Berger Strategy Consultants in the field of transportation, and he then spent many years in international management positions at Bombardier Transportation, including the construction of a factory for metro trains in India, the development of Flexity trams, and the production of trams for North America. From 2015 until he joined BVG, he was chairman of the management board of Nordwestbahn and Transdev Hanover, a leading private rail and bus operator in Germany. As you can see, he comes with a lot of experience, and I have myself had the experience of using the public transport system in Berlin. So I'm very excited to see your presentation and to hear you speak. Over to you, Dr. Erfurt.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation and welcome back after the break. I will be happy to give you a bit of insight how Berlin is on the way to zero emission by 2030. So I think it would be nice if you could just share the presentation with us, and then I'll take us all through.
Yes, I'm just going to put it on full screen. I have it with me. If you can just give me just
that's all fine. And I'm happy to hear that you had the pleasure to experience our public transport system here as well. It's just one of the largest in Europe, of course. And myself, I'm in charge as COO for the bus, the tram, the metro, and you can see behind me, you can see the latest metro station we just opened a couple of months ago. It's dramatic. It's really fantastic metro station we just opened. So we're not only operating buses, we're operating the full range, and actually we also have 6 ferries here. But now let's go to the bus side, because that's where we have the biggest challenge to move towards being a fully electric company. So I would like to give you some insights on how Berlin moves forward on the way to zero emission. And our target is to have a completely zero emission bus fleet by 2030. If you just go to the next slide, please, I can will be happy to give you a bit of an overview of BVG. Nope. Perfect, exactly. Just so that you can see what Berlin is doing in terms of mobility, we provide, develop, and integrate mobility for all of Berlin. It's tram, it's bus, it's the metro, and it's, as I said, 6 ferries. But we also work on topics like on-demand transport, which is a so-called Bergkönig, or autonomous driving, where we have some test vehicles running here in the suburbs. So we're not just focusing, as I always say, on the core business of the 4 transport modes with bus, tram, metro, and ferries, but also developing new systems, because especially if you look on the on-demand side, I'm personally convinced we will, in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a strong convergence between on-demand new mobility service and the core mobility service we're offering today. So let's go to the next slide, please, to give you an overview what our network is like. We have more than 6,500 stops in our city bus network. It's, of course, the largest in the country, 456 million passengers, 1,550 buses we are running, and the network is over 1,740 kilometers long. It's a very heterogeneous network with neighborhoods, citywide and suburban lines, and we have many lines that are also in operation 24 hours. I often have suppliers here who tell me, hey, you know what, you have 8 hours where you don't operate and where you can recharge your buses. Then I, slowly have to educate them that this is Berlin, this is very special, and we're not shutting down operations for 8 hours at night, but many buses are really running all night long. And if you go to our depots, it usually gets, quite packed between 10 and 11 at night, and at 3 in the morning, the first buses go out, and then, every 60 seconds, buses are leaving our depots. Let's go to the bus fleet we're operating at the moment. Just to give you an overview, we have the typical Berlin double-deck buses, and it's a big double-deck buses. It's 40 meters long, 3 axles, and 407 meters high. And we have about close to 250 buses. We are waiting desperately for 200 new double-deck buses, and these will be the last diesel buses we actually ordered. Well, the tender was placed I think 5 years ago. There was no electric double-deck available at that time, and so we ordered 200 new double-deck buses, and they will arrive end of this year up to next year. But these will be the last diesel ones we'll get. We have single buses, 12-meter buses, and the 18-meter articulated low-floor buses. In total, 1,550 buses, just to give you an overview. Out of this, we have 138 buses electrified so far. Let's move on, please. How do we want to become a locally emission-free public transport system? We looked at very different technologies. We looked at depot charging or opportunity charging. We're also looking at battery trolley hybrid buses. We also looked extensively on fuel cells, hybrid range extenders, especially for the construction of a double-deck bus. So we don't want to construct it ourselves, but we did a feasibility study, of course. What turned out is that we will continue the path to electric. For us, it's very clear we will use electric buses, and when we'll put a tender out for double-deck buses, these will also be electric buses. Extensive studies have been done. What is the best solutions, fuel cells or battery? And we decided also for economic reason to continue with battery. And I think it's important at one point in time, you need to clearly take a decision. We didn't want to go with too many technologies in parallel. We decided to go electric. Yes, it took a bit of courage to exclude one technology, because excluding is it's always painful. You need to say no to something, which is not easy. But we clearly decided that we'll go the way to electric. Please go on to the next slide. So how does the ramp-up phase look like? We started in 2019 with some 31 buses. 2020 and 2021, we have now 138. And by end of next year, we want to have close to 230 buses. The final goal is to have about 1,850 buses. You might wonder, why is this, some 300 buses more than we have now? Well, it's basically because we see that as of what we know today, the range is not sufficient, so we need more buses to cover our network. At this point in time, we don't see a one-on-one equivalent. It's 1.1, 1.15, something like this, depending on the length of the route. But we clearly need more buses. Of course, also our city is a bit growing, that's also included here. But the main driver is basically that we still have some challenges on the range the buses can drive, and we really, we challenge every manufacturer. The buses need to achieve the kilometers in Berlin conditions, and it's not, it should not sound arrogant that when I say Berlin conditions, it's just, but it underlines that we are a large city, and that we really have some very, very special circumstances which we need to consider. And I will explain a bit as we go along on the presentations, what are the really characteristics, specificas we need to consider here. If you move to the next slide, you can see what we have achieved within 3 years, from 0 to about 120, 100 in January 21. 120 electric battery solo buses were on the road. Now we are at if I include the articulated buses, it's 137 buses that are already on the road. It's a mixed fleet from Mercedes and Solaris buses. We have more than 6 million kilometers driven. It's a high availability in average. The availability rate, the technical availability rate, is above 91%, which is a good rate, and it's comparable to the diesel fleet, of course. We installed 120 charging points all on one depot. So if you go there at night, you just see yellow buses, yellow electric buses. The total depot, and it's one of the 6 we have, the total depot covers close to 300 buses, and 120 buses are electric and are at the charging points every night. And of course, we did a lot of CO2 and NOx reduction during that time and contributed to a bit better environment here. So if you just move on to the next slide, please. What were some of the big challenges we were facing? And I said earlier, you know, that every manufacturer needs to confirm to us that that the buses are able to meet the range in Berlin conditions. We had a situation early this year when there was snow, it was cold, and there were big demonstrations. And this was a big challenge for us because on the one hand side, the buses are so optimized that there's a lot of electric recuperation, you know, from braking. But if there's a demonstration, if the city is packed, then you go very slowly. You don't, you know, you don't have much energy to recuperate. So that was a big problem for us because simply the portion of recuperation of the energy was just not there. It was missing because we couldn't drive fast, we couldn't, you know, brake. It was just going step by step throughout the city on these 2 days. Traffic was a nightmare. It was snow. It was big demonstrations here. You know, as worse as it can get. And then, of course, due to the very low temperature, it was below -10, -11. We also realized that there is, of course, more energy consumption, especially for preheating. And combined with a local recuperation, we had some range issues. Let's be very clear on this. It was only 1.5% of the electric buses had to be taken out earlier. But nevertheless, of course, this caused some outcry among the politicians and then in the public. Because the batteries are not sufficient, the batteries cannot stand the cold weather and all these sort of things. And it really took us some time first, you know, to understand the issue. It was not the battery. I mean, it's always easy to say, you know, the battery is not sufficient, we need larger batteries, blah, blah, blah. And then we really did some very thorough analysis together with the manufacturers, which is very important in these stages because we're all learning. We're all on a learning and an exploring journey. So we work very closely with the manufacturers to see what are the real causes. And one was, of course, the low recuperation, and second was the high energy consumptions. So we did a few changes on the thermal management and process optimizations, especially regarding preheating of the vehicles, that these cases should not happen again, hopefully, once it gets cold again. But it really shows that this is, you know, a very complex topic, and it's not just the battery. There are many factors you need to consider in such an analysis. And I can everyone really recommend, take your time, take your analysis, take the data, you know, dig deep into it to really see what are the issues before, you know, coming to a conclusion maybe a bit too fast. If you move to the next slide, please, you can see the articulated buses, 17 of them. We have an operation from Solaris, and they are charged with 2 Siemens high power chargers at the end of the line, 300 kV at 450 kV at the stations, and 300 kV at the depot. More than 800,000 kilometers driven today. Also good availability. So we have both types in operation. let's be very frank, this is a very, very expensive solution. So we are moving back actually to depot charging. So next slide, please. What have we learned so far from our rollout phase? Yeah, expertise and deeper understanding of the e-bus system. This is really, a big change for our organization. We move away from the diesel bus we have known for almost decades. We move to electric and much more smarter buses. So there are so many data available that the challenge for us is actually to sort out the real data, use these data to manage our operations, to manage the fleet, work with KPIs. It also needs to have very clear definition of interfaces with all the different suppliers. Well, earlier you didn't have, to define any interface with your gas or petrol supplier. There was just the filling station. Now the filling station moves electric, and suddenly you have to have a lot of interfaces there. Make sure you have very, very clear requirements, do a requirements management, and also design freeze. That's what we often learn, is especially when it comes to construction work, you change here, you change there, and you optimize and optimize and optimize. At the end, you realize, whoop, it's a bit of a mess I created by over-optimizing. Make sure you have a very clear design freeze. Change management, so if there are technical changes, take track of them. Continuous improvement of processes. Yes, we really need to resync our maintenance work, our material flow. Of course, there is much less work needed in the depots for maintaining such buses. So with the Works Council, we're working on some agreement how to move forward. We will not need less people because we have more buses, but of course we need to train and qualify our staff, and this is also something we need to plan well in ahead. Problem solver with suppliers and OEMs. I said earlier, the issues we had during the cold weather, we would not have been able to solve them by ourselves. Work closely with the suppliers, make what we always call, a kind of gated or fenced area. You say, here we exchange data, and we both agree we don't use this for claims or anything like that. That you really have a team focus on solving the issue technically, and then commercially in step 2. But first, focus on the technical side. If you do both, then it's difficult to really find the truth. So this is a recommendation I can really give everyone. Solve commercial from the technical point, do a bit of a fenced area. I had discussions with my legal folks here, you can imagine, but we found a way forward and make clear agreements with the supplier how to handle these topics. So last slide, please, and I can assure you it won't be boring until 2030. We're looking at the battery ranges, and I think it's fantastic what the range is. Extending, we get better, longer ranges and larger batteries. There's a lot of project management we need to do. We are just building infrastructure like hell at the moment. The limiting factor are not the buses. The limiting factor is the infrastructure. I need to build more than at least 3 new depots and the 6 existing ones, and the depot has between 200 and 300 buses each. We need to do a lot of work there, and while having the depots in operation. So this is, under the, we say in German, under Rollout, so under the rolling wheel, we're doing a lot of construction work, which is not easy. Power supply and smart charging, also electricity suppliers, they need to learn and provide us at every time the required energy. High capability or capacity vehicles, we work on electrification. I said, oh, we need double deckers here. They just simply belong to Berlin, and these vehicles are needed to carry the large amount of passengers when we have stations which cannot accommodate articulated buses. Operations are complex. We need to install new IT systems. Financing and funding is, of course, a big topic. We see there is money available, fortunately. The challenge for us is to secure it in first place and then really to spend it in time, because we see delays, and we would actually very much approve a bit more flexibility in this financing and especially in the funding schemes, because it is a new technology, it is a new venture we are all entering in, and it's hard to say, you know, in this year or in this quarter, I will have finished all my construction work and have all the buses in place. So we would really appreciate a bit more flexibility in this case. That is the Berlin way to zero emission to electrify our bus fleet. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was interesting, and I'm happy to receive your questions now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Erfurt, for sharing the view from Berlin and sharing your thoughts over there. We have some questions coming in, and the first question, of course, is on hydrogen. So why aren't you considering hydrogen, which could improve ranges and space optimization? One of your main providers of battery electric vehicles also supplies fuel cell electric vehicles. So what are your thoughts? Why not hydrogen?
Why not hydrogen? Because simply we did the math and it was too expensive for us.
Okay.
Very simple. Sorry. You know, sometimes a straight answer forward might be the best. No, we did, especially for the double-deck buses, we did a lot of calculations together with universities, with research in institutes to see what is the best. And we excluded hydrogen simply because of the cost side and the transportation issue of hydrogen. I mean, electricity is basically all over the city. At my depots, I don't have hydrogen yet, and it's very difficult. And at least in Germany, with all the approval processes, it takes 8, 9, 10 years, you know, to build really a hydrogen track within the city. So that was the main costs and the issue of, you know, getting the hydrogen to the depots. These were the two main reasons to exclude it at this point in time.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned you have 138 electric buses that have been supplied by Mercedes and Solaris. What has been your experience like with both these organizations? Yesterday we had Dorothy from Movia Copenhagen, who had joined us, and she said that they prefer Chinese manufacturers over some traditional European ones. So what is your view, and what has been your experience like so far?
Okay, I need to be a bit careful now because we just have a tender out. So please excuse if I, you know, might speak a bit in let's say in the cloud. Let me put it in general. I think what we see is very interesting. We have a change in the industry, that the traditional manufacturers are challenged by the new kids on the block. The Busco, the Beats, you know, the Chinese manufacturers all over, companies that have not been there, you know, let's say 10 years ago. And I think this is really interesting. That's big opportunity for us also as operators, that we are not, you know, stuck to the traditional, excuse me if I say German, you know, car manufacturers with a strong heart from Baden-Württemberg. We have a much larger range of potential suppliers. However, you also need to consider that, and this is also something we look at very carefully, how is the entire world economy developing, how are supply chains evolving, will we still have, you know, in the years to come, the same amount of free flow of goods, or are there some political changes which could happen? So this is something we also need to consider. Concerning the manufacturers we have in the fleet, I said, you know, we have a good technical availability above 90%. It's from both. It's whether it's Solaris or you take the Mercedes, and you know, some drivers they like the Solaris more. It is more of the touchpad type, and we have the other generation who always wants a star. I say, if I drive a bus, I want a Mercedes, so we have them both.
Great, great. There's a question on impact of COVID. Has COVID sort of like pushed your plans? Has COVID resulted in schedules going off track? Are you seeing a delay in your targets to deploy zero emission buses?
Regarding to as it comes to COVID, I see a big drop in passenger revenues at the moment. So the mobility in Berlin is already on the pre-COVID level. However, the best case is that we have, about 80% of the passengers back, which is already a high number compared to other cities, but we're still missing tourists, we're missing fair trades, all these sort of things. It has not yet changed our schedules when it comes to electrification, because it's also a political target. Let's be very frank. It is also a political target. I will not exclude that it could change at some point in time because it costs a hell lot of money, and we might see some changes. At this point in time, we still continue our path. However, we see difficulties on the construction side. Construction companies are in very, very high demand, and on existing construction side, COVID indeed had an impact.
There's a question on funding. You also mentioned funding as a challenge. What kind of investment has been made so far? What have been the sources of funds? And what kind of investment is expected in the future? And how are you going to sort of fund that?
I think we're about to how do we say, the on top investment. So it's usually we cover what a diesel bus costs, and then we get funds and public subsidies concerning the additional costs. And if I'm not mistaken, it's about 2.5 billion until 2030, approximately, including all the investments in new depots and new sites. We're looking at federal as well as local grants, which cover up to 80% of the investment cost. It's also but it's usually then just the, on top what you pay on top of a diesel bus, up to 80% are covered when it comes to vehicles. And we see some, 40–50% of the costs are covered when it comes to infrastructure.
There's a question on the list of challenges that you had mentioned. What do you think will be defining the critical path for the pace in the zero emission transition in the fleet for the coming years with respect to the challenges that you mentioned?
The biggest challenge at the moment is actually infrastructure. Because as I said, we need to build 3 new complete depots. Finding space, finding property, paying for it. Property is expensive. I'm not worried. I'm not worrying too much about getting the buses. And that's the discussion I have with politicians. They want more buses in the city. Can you just order more buses? I can, but I have no place to park them. I have no place to recharge these buses. And installing charging stations on an existing depot which is in operation, where in the morning I have every 60 seconds a bus leaving the depot, and we have depots here in the city, and at night it's packed. I mean, there's just a bit more than a few inches, but not even a meter left between 2 buses when we park them. They are really extremely packed on these depots. I need to say X amount of square meters. You cannot park because I do construction work, and I need to find other places where I can, temporarily store these buses at night and do the inspections, fueling, and so on and so forth. So it's not the amount of buses I can order. It is really the infrastructure and all the construction work we need to do at the moment. This is causing me some headaches from time to time. And then second point is changing the way we work in the depots and working way more with data. We're just not working enough with data at the moment. And there's a big opportunity when you build a new depot. You also have a chance to, install new software, new processes, really go a completely new way. Changing an existing depot is usually a bit more difficult.
I want to be mindful of your time, and I know we just almost run out of time. I just have one last question for you. What are your top priorities that you have for the next 2 to 3 years? What is the top 3 or top 4 priorities that you have?
Top 4 priorities. It is when we come to the high capacity vehicles that we will define our requirements and then find a manufacturer able to produce the high capacity double deck buses electrified. That's one thing. Second, very strict program and project management on the installation of these new depots, new fleet, all this sort of thing, that it really works together. So project and program management, big topic. Financing and funding, securing all the different grants that are out there, and working way more analytically and working way more with data. I think these are the big challenges we have.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those. And on that note, I'm going to bring this session to a close. Thank you so much, Dr. Erfurt, for taking out time and speaking at our conference. Really appreciate your being here today. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure for me to talk to all of you. And whenever you come to Berlin, you are more than welcome to use our public transport. Please excuse the advertisement show now, but you're more than welcome to use our public transport. And if you want to see something of BVG, just drop me a note and we'll see what we can do.
Absolutely, we would love that. Thank you so much for this, Dr. Erfurt. Thank you so much.
A pleasure, and see you in face-to-face next time. Take care.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.